Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Coming back after the weekend. We were looking pretty positive at the end of the weekend, looking at the new trading week. There was a few setups I was watching, but over the weekend I noticed there was a lot of volatile trading in the crypto space with some very long wicks and a lot of stop grabbers on the way down. The buyers continue to support it, but coming into today, we saw a big sell-off. Ethereum down double digits, Bitcoin down big, most of the alts getting hit pretty hard today. And so we'll take a look at those, we'll look at the charts, but most importantly, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time at the near-term charts because I want to focus on the big picture. That's the most important thing to be watching this week and the next couple of weeks, in my opinion. And we are very close. Bitcoin is right over a key support level that will not take very much more to the downside to be broken. So we want to pay attention to that. Let's take a quick look at the coin market cap here. You can see over the last 24 hours, some pretty big moves. Bitcoin down 3.5%. Ethereum 10% down. Ripple down 3, Bitcoin Cash down 6. You can just see it's just red across the board. There was some FUD, some concern earlier around Tether. Their blocks had stopped and there was a freeze and people thought maybe this is it. Maybe Tether's going under, something's going on there. I think that caused a little bit more panic to the markets. So we saw that. They've been responding. There was some issues with the Omni blockchain, but just always something going on. And the concern for is Tether going to be solvent is still out there, still lingers in the minds of crypto traders and investors because it's just used on so many exchanges as a base currency. So just something to keep an eye on. We certainly don't want Tether to go under. That would be a very bad event, in my opinion. That'd be a Mt. Gox type of event for the crypto space. And so just something to keep an eye on here near term. But across the board, just a lot of selling as BTC broke down and Ethereum followed suit. So let's take a look at the charts here real quick. Looking at the near term very quickly here, I want to point out the 4-hour chart here over the weekend. You can see we were forming a little bit of a bull flag type of pattern following the rise that we had here. It was a pretty healthy consolidation, but notice these wicks. I mean, just all weekend we kept seeing this big sell-off, these big wicks. They were pretty quick and fast. And then we saw one late yesterday, middle of the night my time, and we just saw the quick sell-off going into the morning. And so here today we're starting to bounce a little bit here. We did get a little bit stretched to the downside in the near term, but not looking positive. This big drop, again, as always, undid the prior week's move or so. But what I want to focus on is the big picture, the weekly chart. If you guys remember, a couple weeks back, we were looking at that big bearish engulfing candle here on BTC. 2 weeks ago, that week undid the prior 3 weeks worth of action. Last week was basically just a little bit of a bounce week. We didn't know how high it would go. We knew it was pretty much a bounce, but it looks like it could not get over that resistance around that 65.50 or so on a closing basis. And very quickly, we've seen the retracement back to the downside. And so what I'm paying attention to right now, very near term, is last week's low, which is right around that 61.70 or so. The exact number here on Binance is 61.69 and change. So 61.70, it will vary a little bit by exchange, but that's going to be the level to be watching because the idea here was we'd see some continuation to the downside following this bearish reversal candle. We saw a little bit of a bounce, still below the 10 EMA on the weekly. And here we are starting to roll over again with some pretty good volume here today on the downside. And so something to pay attention to here going into the next couple of days is going to be, will this level hold? Will we see an undercut and go back up? But I'm concerned that if we break below this, there's not a whole lot of support below that. On a closing basis, weekly support is right around that $6,100 level and much below that. And I expect you'd see a pretty quick sell-off and continuation to this initial move. And you got to remember, we're still within this bigger picture pattern that everyone's watching. We've been watching this for months now, and we're all just kind of paying attention, which way is this going to break? Now, odds favor it breaks lower because it's a big descending triangle pattern, and we've tested this level of support multiple times now. And so something to keep an eye on because we are right there. We're right at the edge, right on support right now. And so any bad news, any kind of more FUD or surprises could quickly send this breaking down. Now, what happens after that? Do I think it's going to break? A lot of the people in my group are asking me, hey, do you think it's going to break? Do we go lower? Purely looking at the technicals, I say it goes lower. I mean, odds favor it does. This is a very bearish pattern. the momentum in the big picture is still much in favor of the sellers. And I think there's a lot of people watching this price point right now, and you'll see some people get out of the way if it starts to break. Over the last couple of months, this has been the ideal place to accumulate, as we have found support there. We've had some pretty good rallies, pulled back, found support again, but you notice these rallies are getting smaller and smaller and smaller each time. And so that is not a bullish signal, because the sellers are showing up much sooner on each of those rallies. A little bit of distribution showing up there. So now the question is, where do we go from here? You can see this pattern will resolve itself here within Q4 for sure, but before the end of the year, but in the next couple of months. Now the big wild card, which the probabilities are just not there, but the big wild card is a surprise ETF approval by the end of this month. There is a review for the 30th of September, or it's due by the 30th. And so going into next week, that's going to be something to be keeping an eye on, but no one's expecting that to be approved here in the next couple of weeks. So that would be a big surprise, and obviously a very bullish fundamental change to the markets. And so other than that, there's not a lot of surprises that we should be looking out for from the bullish case. A lot of the news recently has been bullish, and there's been institutional, and there's been infrastructure and different things, but the market has just shrugged off most of that and continues to roll over here in the near term. So just something to keep an eye on here. Looking at the daily chart, as I record this, we're about to close on this daily candle. We're about to roll into the next trading day, and you can see this has just been a big bearish reversal here. We had this rally, pause for a couple of days right at that resistance level. It just couldn't get past that 10 EMA, and most importantly, we couldn't get past this horizontal price resistance in and around that $6,500 level. And we saw a hanging man reversal candle yesterday, and that confirmed today with some follow through on above average volume to the sell side. So not looking positive here near term. Going to the 1 hour charts, this was the level that I was watching earlier. It did bounce, rallied right into the 10 EMAs, pulling back, rallying again. But right now, these just look like little bear flags to the upside before it rolls over again. Volume declining on these bounces. And so there's just no bullish momentum here in the near term. Let's take a quick look at Ethereum. Now, initially, Ethereum was actually holding up a little bit better, but once it broke below that $212, $213 level, it accelerated pretty quickly and ended the day down on a bigger percentage basis than BTC. Now you can see here, even on the 1 hour here, this RSI was very oversold, so we're seeing a little bit of a bounce, but the bounce is not very strong right now. It's just a little bit more of a bear flag, letting the RSI cool off a little bit, letting this moving average catch up. And so until it can get back above the the low 200s, the 205 at most, this is going to remain a bearish looking pattern. Now on the 4 hour chart, it is pretty stretched. The 10 EMA is still up here around 210, and so would not surprise me to just see some stalling action here, maybe some slight bouncing action. But overall, the chart does remain bearish, especially with BTC sitting right at a key support level. Now you can see Ethereum had been the stronger one, was outperforming on the way up. Even with this recent dip, you can see how high it is from the ultimate low that it had a couple of days ago, but we know Ethereum was lagging significantly, so it made for a very strong counter trend rally. From the exact bottom, Ethereum was up 35% and has since rolled over. So many of the charts were looking pretty bullish yesterday. We were seeing some potential ascending triangles looking like they were about to break out. V-Chain Thor was looking good, Tron, Ripple, a lot of them were just setting up, getting really quiet, really tight, but it was kind of one of those next move wins. BTC was right at resistance and unfortunately just couldn't break through, and we finally saw it roll over and it took down the rest of the crypto market with it. So that's the levels to be watching here in the near term. We can look at the near term picture. I think we'll see some bounce action, some more volatility, but ultimately I'm looking at the bigger picture. This daily chart just does not look very strong right now. We saw that big sell-off. We looked at the bounce, and I remember saying, hey, this is bullish. You go with it as long as it lasts, but just keep in mind the big picture. This is probably just a bounce into resistance, potentially forming a big bear flag. And so far, that looks like it's playing out that way, which means most likely, odds fair, we're going to see some more downside action before we see some upside. So right now, just watch this near-term support level. It's getting pretty volatile here. I expect that as it starts to test here it will be volatile. You'll probably see those long tails on those candles, those big wicks, probably in both directions before one side wins, whether it's the bulls or the bears. But right now, odds favor the bears and the sellers have the momentum. And so that's what I'm going to be watching out for, guys. I will likely do a live stream if it starts to roll over and break that support. So I'll be keeping an eye on the markets, and I'll bring you guys those updates. The rest of the financial markets have also been very turbulent today. We saw the stock market getting hit. There's news on tariffs. I do trade the Forex markets, and so the currencies have absolutely been volatile all over the place with news, with potential interest rates, policy changes, just a lot of action going on across the board, not just in crypto. And I do wonder how much of that is spilling over into the crypto space, or whether BTC is a little bit of a leading indicator into that. The question remains, how does Bitcoin and how does the cryptocurrency market respond in the event of a big financial crisis? The last time we saw a major financial crisis, this space was just basically non-existent. I mean, Bitcoin was new and most of these other cryptos didn't exist at that time. So it's going to be a first when we finally do see a little bit of a financial turbulence, to see how the cryptos respond to that. So we've already seen some small examples of that where there have been currency crises, and a lot of people do flock to crypto as a safe haven, as a way to hedge against massive inflation and other things. So will we see that on a global scale is yet to be seen. But just thought I'd bring that up just because I do pay attention to some of these other markets, and I've noticed there's been a lot of turbulence and a lot of reaction to news. And so it hasn't just been crypto today. It was a pretty volatile day across the board. So we'll see how tomorrow plays out. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, take care, everyone.